Hello, good morning. Um, just confirm you can hear me and we start off.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Hear you.
All right. Welcome to this induction briefing for CPA, paper 9, Audit, Ethics and Assurance. Apologies for the late start off. My name is Aguma Mpairwe. A tutor at MAT Abacus. I have taught this paper for a couple of years, together with the equivalent of this paper in the previous syllabus, which used to be paper 12. So my task today is just to give you a feel of what this paper is going to look like, and maybe take questions from your side in terms of anything that might be of interest to you with respect to this paper. So CPA 9, Auditing, Ethics and Assurance. So I will start off just briefly in terms of my own background professionally. I'm an accountant, auditor. I have worked in auditing, both external and internal auditing. I worked in my early years, I worked with Ernst & Young in external audit. And I subsequently joined the banking industry, where I was chief internal auditor of 3 banks in Uganda, including the Nile Bank, UBA, and most of my career was with East African Development Bank, in charge of internal audit. So I have also taught since 1998 on various professional courses, ACCA, CPA, CIA, CISA, and the MBA program at MAT Abacus. So at the business school, I try to bring the depth and breadth of my work experience and teaching experience to bear in the classroom. And that hopefully helps the student to unpack any difficult or technical aspects of the exam as far as explanations are concerned. So looking at the exam, on your screen, you can see the CPA syllabus for this paper. And the first point to note, given by ICPAU, is that this is a foundation paper, which leads into a more advanced similar paper. So that is important for you to note as a student, because it means that if you're going to pass the paper 16, which is the advanced version of this exam, you must have got a good foundation at paper 9. So for those of you coming in to attempt paper 9, it's important that you give it the necessary time and attention, learn the concepts well, because you have to build on those concepts as we've seen in this illustration at paper 16. And looking at the overall aim, as stated by ICPAU, they say it's to equip the learner or the student with knowledge of planning the audit, execution of the audit, finalization of an audit, and assurance engagements, as well as looking at the side that deals with professional ethics, values, and attitudes. So this is a 2-part exam, in the sense that there are 2, I would say, or really 3 general areas of knowledge that you need to cover. The first is auditing, and auditing very much from the perspective of external auditing. There is also internal auditing as well, but the broad body of knowledge is largely the external audit process. So that is one core part of this syllabus. Then the other part of this syllabus is governance, corporate governance, and the third part is ethics, professional ethics, as well as other perspectives on ethics. So there are three distinct areas of knowledge, as we've seen: auditing, corporate governance, and ethics. Now, these subject areas are not necessarily very technically difficult. We teach this paper as a team of two tutors, myself and my co-tutor. I take the governance and ethics side. My co-tutor takes the, the auditing side. But I've taught both sides on this exam before, so I equally can take the audit side if necessary. So there are various learning outcomes. I don't want to go through the learning outcomes for the sake of time, but I would want to talk about the level of assessment and the exam structure. So the level of assessment, as ICPAU says here, is that the institute wants to be able to test knowledge, application, and analysis of principles acquired in these subject areas of audit, ethics, and values. And so in terms of the assessment, ICPAU has created a framework which will involve 3-hour exam with two sections, A and B. With section A, you're going to have two compulsory questions, 20 marks each. And section B, 4 questions of 20 marks each. But within that section B, you will attempt any 3. So that gives you some bit of choice in terms of your preferred area. Now, the detailed syllabus, if we'll just go through that fairly quickly. I won't go through this in that much detail, but this just to give you a general feel. I always go into the finer detail in my first lecture, because there we have the time and the liberty to go a little bit deeper. But basically, the examiner wants you to understand what auditing is about. So part A of the syllabus is an introduction to auditing, where you will understand what auditing is. You will define auditing, look at the purpose and objectives of auditing, look at differences between auditing and accounting, look at things to do with theoretical aspects of auditing, like the concept of accountability, the concept of stewardship, concept of agency. Look at concepts around responsibility for financial statements and users of financial information, because the auditor, who is coming in as an independent party, is mainly going to be looking at the financial statements prepared by management and giving an opinion for the benefit of shareholders and other stakeholders. So that's why they want you to know about users of financial statements. Can be shareholders, they can be banks, they can be regulators, they can be government, tax authorities, and so on. Then you go into other aspects of audit theory, audit postulates. These are theoretical principles on which the practice of auditing is built. You go into other concepts.
I think your battery is about to run out, in case you've not
All
noticed.
right. Okay. Thank you. Let me deal with that. Just a second. Just a second. Right. Sorry about that. So we just continue. We will also be required to understand things like the different types of audits, difference between external and internal audits, statutory as opposed to non-statutory audits, financial audits, operational audits, IT audits, and other kinds of audits. So that will be the general overview in terms of the first part of the syllabus. Then you get into the second part, which looks at the legal, regulatory, and ethical environment of auditing. Auditing is a regulated practice worldwide. You would not just wake up as an accountant and open an audit firm. It is regulated by law, regulated by the profession in different countries, and there are strict rules required to be followed to be able to get a license to practice as an auditor, particularly an external auditor. So that's what that part B deals with, but also deals with the legal side that influences the practice of auditing. Because in many countries, auditing is regulated through the Companies Act, and the Companies Act says a lot of things about the auditor, the qualifications of the auditor, the appointment of the auditor by shareholders, the rights and duties of the auditor, and rules that will cover matters like dismissal of auditors in case a company wants to dismiss its auditors. How should that be done, and what rights do the auditors have? Rights to speak to the shareholders. So that's what Part B deals with. And Part B also introduces regulation of auditing from the profession's perspective. Auditing is practiced in line with particular standards, and Uganda, like many other countries in the world, follows international standards on auditing issued by the International Audit and Assurance Standards Board. So we will be looking at that, and the learning in terms of the way the lecturer will teach you will be aligned with the different standards that are relevant at this stage of the exam. So if he teaches you about planning for the audit, he will be teaching you in line with the ISA standard on planning. If he teaches you about risk assessment, the same, and so on. It teaches you about reporting, the same. So the lectures will be aligned with the international standards on auditing. But as a student, you are not required to get all these standards and try to memorize them or cram them. No, that's not necessary. The auditor will just pick up elements of the standard that are relevant for your understanding at this stage of the exam. Then there will be the discussion on ethical requirements that influence the practice of auditing. They are mainly contained in the ICPAU Code of Ethics. And this area is going to be taken up both on the auditing side and also on the ethics side, which I teach. So it's some kind of area which has some kind of intersection between the audit and the ethics side. That is the rules given by ICPA Uganda in terms of guiding the behavior of auditors in Uganda. Then you will deal with something to do with the liability of auditors. Auditors can be sued. They can be sued for negligence. They can be sued by shareholders if the shareholders feel the auditors have not done their job right. They've issued opinions that are inappropriate. So auditors can end up in court. So you're required to know something around that. Then Part C of the syllabus gets you into the audit engagement itself, looking at how the audit engagement will be started off. First of all, the auditor has got to be formally invited by a company to act as its auditor. But there will be professional procedures the auditor must first undertake before he accepts that engagement. But following that, there will be an engagement letter signed between the auditor and the client, in which the auditor will confirm to the client his terms of work and how he's going to conduct his work. So that will be covered in Part C of the syllabus, as well as looking at things to do with the planning of the engagement. Once the auditor has been appointed, then the auditor will have to plan his engagement. He doesn't just start off testing the financial statements and controls. The auditor will first spend a good amount of time understanding the client business, understanding the client environment, looking at areas of risk, and planning in terms of how he's going to address those kind of issues with regard to how he's going to do his testing and when he's going to do his testing and how much he's going to do in terms of testing. So those things will be covered in planning, as well as looking at things like resources, logistics, and other things like that. So you'll also cover something called materiality. Materiality is looking at the importance or significance of error and its influence on the opinion of the auditor. We'll come to that. It's a little bit of a technical discussion, but basically the auditor is going to give an opinion, and his opinion, if it's a good opinion, will say, as far as I'm concerned, the financial statements are generally true and fair. True and fair does not mean 100% accurate. There might be some error, but it's not important, it's not significant. So that's the concept of materiality. Then you will cover assessment of risk, building from a concept called audit risk being the risk that the auditor can get his opinion wrong. He can tell the shareholders or the company that the accounts are not okay, and yet they are. Or he can tell the shareholders that the accounts are okay, and yet they're not. That brings the concept of risk to the auditor, because, as we have just discussed, the auditor can end up being sued. So that concept of audit risk will be discussed in this section of the syllabus, and your tutor will take you through the components of audit risk: inherent risk, control risk, detection risk, and you'll discuss that. Then you will move on. I'm not covering everything. Of course, as you see, I'm just giving you key highlights. You will then move on to section D, which is the area that deals with internal control. Now, internal control is going to be one of the most important aspects in the exam, and that one of the most important aspects that you need to understand in the audit preparation at this stage. What is internal control? Internal control is the area that deals with the financial controls that are necessary for the preparation of accurate financial statements. So financial statements are prepared by an accounting system, as you probably already know. You've probably done accounting exams. So the financial statements are just an output from the processing of data through accounting systems. Those accounting systems will have controls of different types across different domains of financial information processing. And so the auditor will want to test the controls. If the auditor finds that the controls are reliable, then the auditor gets comfortable and takes the view that a good system of controls is likely to produce accurate financial statements. So that's why there will be a lot of focus in this exam to build your understanding of the concept of internal control. So you will cover that, and many professional accountancy bodies will teach internal control in particular domains. For example, as you can see here, internal control over sales, or accounts receivable, internal controls over purchases or accounts payable, internal control over inventory, internal controls over expenditure, over payroll, over cash and bank, and over PPE. So you will have to learn the kind of good controls one would expect to find in all these areas. And that often is the nature or the subject focus of the examiner's interest in the exam question around internal control. Now, it is a very practical discussion, and you need to give it the best of your attention, because, as I said, it's going to be a very, very core area in many audit exams. But then, following that, you will learn about tests of controls, and as that area, sometimes they are called compliance tests. That area where we, as auditors, we are dealing with assessing the quality of the controls the client has in place. And if there are weaknesses, the auditor is going to issue what they call a management letter, where the auditor is going to point out these weaknesses in the control system to the client. So you will cover that. The next, in section E, you will deal with audit execution. And that is where the auditor is going to have to be able to plan and implement an audit effectively, because the auditor cannot test everything. The auditor will have to understand the risk in the client environment, and on the basis of the risk, determine how much or how deep he's going to test in terms of the transactions he chooses to look at. So that's where the concept of sampling comes in, and you learn how the auditor selects samples, how he designs the audit sample, how he determines the sample size, and how he deals with something that is called sampling risk. The risk that the sample that you choose may not be representative of the population. So the moment you choose a sample and you want to express an opinion on a wider population on the basis of a sample, you run the risk that the sample you have chosen is not a good sample, and you could draw wrong conclusions from it. So that's the concept of sampling risk, and that you will cover. But the good news is that in professional exams in today's world in auditing, they don't take you into the mathematical side of sampling. So if some of you did sampling maybe at university or at O-level, if you were worried about the mathematical side, that is no longer examined. So it's just the theoretical concepts around sampling that you will have to deal with in the exam. Next, you will deal with another very important area called evidence. Auditors are, in a sense, investigators. So we gather evidence to be able to support the opinion that we issue. So you will have to look at types of evidence, sources of evidence, quality of evidence, reliability of evidence, gathering evidence that is sufficient in terms of quantity and appropriate in terms of relevant to what the auditor is testing. So you will deal with that, and it's another very, very important aspect of the syllabus. And you look at how the auditor can gather evidence through different approaches. The auditor can inspect, the auditor can observe, the auditor can inquire, the auditor can perform what are called analytical procedures, which you can see on the screen there, calculate some ratios. You have probably done the calculation of ratios in accounting exams. So that comes back, but we calculate the same ratios, but we use them for a different purpose in auditing. Then we can also gather evidence from external parties. We can write to the client's bank to confirm how much cash at bank there is. We can write to debtors to confirm how much is owed. We can write to creditors. So we can do all that and gather evidence from third parties as well. We can also use the work of experts in case the auditor is trying to assess the value certain assets that require an expert to value. For instance, oil reserves or minerals or things like that, or intangible assets. You may need to use experts. So that will be a source of evidence. So we'll also look at what is highlighted there as part 10, that section, and that is the balance sheet or statement of financial position audit. Now, apart from internal control, this is the second major area that is going to be examined in an audit exam across many of the professional bodies. It's the how do we test the accuracy of the financial statement disclosures, whether they are in the balance sheet or the income statement. So this is a very important aspect of audit. We'll perform what we call substantive procedures, where we are going to break down the numbers in the balance sheet, especially, and then see whether those numbers are accurate and make sense. So it's not very difficult. Your tutor will take you through the mechanics of that. But once you master it, it will be easy for you to navigate the questions that are set. So two key areas, internal control and this area of what we'll be calling substantive procedures, two key areas that often appear in audit exams. Now, once the auditor has performed those two major kinds of tests, then the auditor has gathered sufficient information for them to make a conclusion about the client's financial information, financial statements. And that brings you to the area of finalization of the audit, review of the evidence, and finally issuing an opinion. So that you will cover in section F. The auditor will finalize the audit, look at all the evidence he or she has gathered, ask themselves whether it makes sense in light with all the information they gathered at the planning stage and as they went through the audit. And they will also look at certain particular considerations. Is this organization likely to continue as a going concern? If not, the auditor may need to make a certain statement as part of his reporting to shareholders. And so that's the final stage of the audit. And then the auditor will make his views known about the financial statements in his formal opinion. Now, the exam also covers IT. In today's world, virtually all financial information is gathered, processed, collated, and reported using information technology. So all the controls we've been talking about, all the financial reports we've been talking about are prepared in IT environments. And so it's important for today's auditors to understand how to audit through IT systems. So that is going to feature in your exam. And so you will have to cover that well and look at how the auditor can use what they call computer-assisted audit techniques as well. This exam will also cover public sector auditing. A number of much of what I've just been talking about auditing is looking at auditing largely in a private sector, corporate company environment. But ICPAU, as an exam, also prepares its students to work in public sector environments, i.e., if you work as a member of the Auditor General's office, the Auditor General will be auditing public sector enterprises. So how does he do that? There are a lot of similarities, but there are also very important differences which you need to know about. And so that will be covered in section H. You'll be taken through the framework for public sector audits, objective and scope of public sector audits, the Auditor General, the role of the Auditor General, the audit report of the Auditor General, and all that, including international standards that are followed by what are called supreme audit institutions, like the OAG office in different parts of the world. Then you will discuss internal auditing. So as I said at the start, most of what we will find in this subject will be focused on the external audit, where an external person comes to look at financial statements of an organization. However, organizations also will have internal audit departments. And today, internal auditors are expected to give assurance around effectiveness of governance, risk and control systems. And so you learn about that side of things. So next, you will look at what are called assurance and non-assurance engagements. So you will learn that not auditors sometimes may be called in to do some kind of specific engagements which do not involve a lot of testing. So in those kind of scenarios, the auditor may not give a standard report as he or she would do in case they were doing a full scope audit. So you will learn about those kind of engagements. Sometimes the auditor can be called to review historical information, can be called to review interim financial information, can be called to do what are called attestation engagements. All that you will cover under that section J. And then you will be taken to look at the final aspect under the audit area, which is, let me just pick that up. Okay, so other assurance engagements like examination of prospective financial information. If a company wants to get financing from a bank, the bank may want to see forecasts of expected financial performance. So that is prospective. It is not actual. It is speculated that this is what can happen under certain assumptions. So auditors may be called in to examine that as well. So that would be largely what you would be expected to cover under the audit side of the syllabus. Now, as I told you at the beginning, there's the audit side, and then there is the governance and ethics side. And so the ethics side is clarified here in this section 2 of the syllabus. And so this concerns itself with behavior of individuals, behavior of companies in terms of right and wrong behavior. So it's important for us as auditors and accountants because many times accountants and auditors may fail in their work. If you go online and you search for audit firms find, just put that in Google, you will find many of the world's large audit firms, the international audit firms, have been sued, have been fined in many countries in the world for unethical behavior. Failure to live up to the standards and professional practice that is expected of auditors. So we are expected to learn about these things to make sure that when we go out to practice, we do our work ethically, i.e. we uphold the good name of the profession and don't do things that would bring our profession into disrepute. So this area is it's not really difficult, but there are a number of theories that we need to cover because we look at ethics from a number of different perspectives. We look at what we call philosophical ethics. We look at professional ethics, we look at business ethics, we look at environmental ethics, and workplace ethics, and many things. So it's not technically difficult. We take you through this side of the syllabus with a lot of examples. It's interesting. It's an interesting part of the syllabus. And it is going to deal with things that you already know in terms of your general experience of life. And having done that, you will then get into the final side of the syllabus, which is corporate governance. So corporate governance is about the way companies are directed and controlled. Companies are normally going to be run at the highest level by a board of directors, and the board of directors will be there to supervise and oversee the CEO, the MD, and his team. And periodically, there will be meetings at which the board meets management to discuss the performance of the company and give guidance in terms of how things should proceed. So that's the whole area of corporate governance. We'll take that on. We look at governance principles. We look at sources of good practice around corporate governance, the Companies Act in Uganda, the Institute of Corporate Governance of Uganda, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development guidelines or principles on corporate governance. We look at the board of directors, the role of the board. We look at the role of the chairperson of the board, directors, the different kinds of directors, the role of the CEO, the role of the company secretary, and the role of the accountant in upholding good corporate governance. Then there is a requirement for us to look at fraud and money laundering, because if you are dealing with money, these kind of issues may be present. So we'll look at what these mean and look at the theories behind them. And then your examiner also wants you to look at the technology side of fraud in today's global environment, looking at cyber security, cyber attacks, looking at things to do with cryptocurrency and fraud in that kind of environment. So we cover that as well. Then we also will cover whistleblowing. That is where there is malpractice in an organization, but people are not able to report properly within the organization, probably because the people in the organization at the top are involved in the malpractice. And so it would be risky or dangerous to report within the organization. So in that case, you have got to report outside, sometimes to a particular entity, could be to your external auditors, or it could be to the Inspector General of Government or Inspectorate of Government office. So we'll handle all that as part of that side of the syllabus. So basically, that is what your exam will be like. There are references here given in terms of what you will need to look at on your side as a student, but we would not really want you to bother yourself with buying or reading these kind of reference books, as the tutors will give you all the material you need in our classes, as well as in any handouts that we will share with you on the Learning Management portal. Now, we can just look at a sample exam. At the start of the new syllabus, your examiner prepared a model exam. The model exam looks like, let's see if we can pick it up. This is what he prepared, he or she. So as we said, the exam has got two sections. Section A, 2 compulsory questions, 20 marks each. Section B, out of 4 questions of 20 marks, you attempt 3. So it gives you a chance to drop 1. 3 hours, 15 minutes, which is good time given to you for the exam. 15 minutes really helps you to do your planning and read through the exam, select your questions, and then the 3 hours you proceed to put down your answers. Now, your exam section A, in terms of the compulsory, the examiner will give you, as he does in virtually all the questions, not all, but many of the questions, the examiner is going to use a case method, case study. So they give you case study kind of based questions for either auditing or governance and ethics. So whichever preference the examiner has for a particular sitting, your question 1 could be an ethics question or it could be an audit question. And question 2, so it's up to him, he can interchange, but basically be ready in section A to handle questions on all sides of the syllabus. So in this exam, you cannot say, I'm going to specialize. You cannot say, I don't like auditing, so I'm going to focus on governance and ethics. That will not work. You're not likely to be able to pass if you do that. So make sure you give all sides of the syllabus appropriate attention, and that should help you get a passing score. So the examiner is going to break down his questions in terms of the way he examines. He's going to break down his questions into smaller parts. It's not going to be one question asked for 20 marks. It's going to be a series of questions asked ranging from 1 to 2 to maybe up to 10 marks. But he doesn't often give you 10-mark sections. As you can see, some questions are 2 marks, others 5, others 4. And he doesn't have to follow this particular format. But the point is, he doesn't give you one requirement for 20. He breaks it down. And when he breaks it down, he often now touches different aspects of the syllabus in that breakdown. That's why you need to be prepared well across all the areas of the syllabus. Okay, so if we look at, this is a governance question. Governance question is asking you for 6 marks, the OECD principles of governance, which we saw in the syllabus. Then for 5 marks, responsibilities of non-executive directors, which we just talked about, for 5 marks, and so on. So that's the way the examiner approaches his section A. So section B, as we said, you attempt 3 out of 4. That is going to be what you prefer. Very much you will see case study questions set, especially for the governance and ethics side. Scenarios in which these concepts are examined, and again in the requirement, a breakdown of questions. We can see now 7 marks, 6 marks, 3 and 4 marks for one question. Main types of audits carried out by the OAG office or Auditor General's office. Okay, so you can see a lot of direct correlation between what you saw in the syllabus and what the examiner is asking you in the exam. All right, so that's really what your exam is going to look like. As we said, section B gives you just some slight ability to choose what you want. Out of 4, you choose 3. They're all 20 markers, so you need to mind your time. And on our part as the tutors, we will give you coverage over both sides of the syllabus over a number of weeks. The syllabus, the timetable is already out. MAT administration can give you more details on the timetable and when we are going to start our first class. But we'll also build in, we are going to build in mock exams as well as a debrief following the mock exam, where we explain to you what we have seen as we have marked the mock exams and give you feedback in terms of where you as students need to improve, common mistakes, areas of misinterpretation, that type of thing. So as MAT Abacus, we are trying to bring that very strongly as something that is going to be very useful for you in terms of your exam preparation. So please make sure that you participate in those kind of mock sessions, as well as the debrief sessions that will follow mock exams. All right, so I think that is it for the general feedback from my side. I am happy to take questions from your side. And if there are any more general questions which admin can handle, they are also on the call to answer those questions as well. So thank you, and over to you. Any questions or comments?
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm wondering if I were to do this paper and I wanted to do 2 papers, which other paper can I best do it with?
Well. Now, let me just say that this paper, as you have seen, this paper is very, very broad in terms of the syllabus requirement. When I teach the first class, I tell the students that had a separate paper for ethics and governance. It was a separate paper. And auditing was also a separate paper. But then ICPAU had a syllabus change, and it combined these papers into one without dropping much content at all. So effectively, this exam is more like 2 exams in one. So it is very, very broad in terms of its coverage. And some areas, especially on the audit side, like the internal controls and the substantive procedures or balance sheet audit, are a bit technical. So I always make that very clear in my first class, cautioning the student to give this exam maximum attention, all right? Because it is extremely broad. And I urge the students to start their revision more or less from day one, from lecture one. Because if you leave this exam and you leave your books aside and lecture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you decide to start your revision late, you find there's very, very much to read. So I want you to have that in mind, that this exam, Audit, Ethics, and Assurance, is a very broad exam. But secondly, auditing is a very practical exam, practical. A number of the things that are talked about in auditing, things like the different documents, the invoices, the vouchers, the purchase orders, purchase requisitions, goods received notes, etc. Those are very practical documents that some students who may not be working may find a bit not difficult, but things that they may not easily relate to. So auditing has that side to it. It's a very practical discipline which is being taught in a theoretical way. And sometimes that causes problems for students. So my advice to you is, if you want to combine this exam with another paper, choose the easiest of all the other options that you have. Don't combine this exam with another difficult exam for the sake of maybe trying to complete your exams in order. If you have another option which you can sit, choose the easiest other option for you to take at the same time as this paper, so that you don't get overwhelmed when it comes to time for revision. Because I can't make a prescription for you and say you must choose paper X alongside audit, ethics, and assurance. It's good if you have done the accounting papers, because auditing builds on accounting concepts, but it's not mandatory that you have done the equivalent level accounting paper before you do this. All right. I hope that is okay for you. Madam, is that all right?
Yes.
Okay. I see something in the chat. Let me pick it up. Ratios calculated here too. Yes, yes. Just hold on. Let me deal with this question in the chat. Someone is asking, Madam Eunice is asking, are ratios calculated in this exam too? Answer is yes. We talked about part of evidence gathering, where we talked about something called analytical review. So in analytical review, as I said, the auditor will calculate ratios, but the ratios he calculates will be used for audit interpretation. All right, you can calculate your profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, gearing ratios, but you will use the answers from those ratios to help you decide what is risky and maybe give you guidance on what to focus on in your audit. So yes, there will be a calculation of ratios. Yes, any other question? Any other question or comment? Yeah, so this is an exam that we will advise that, as we do, we often advise our students to form discussion groups as early as possible. At MAT Abacus, we will give you access, as we said, to the learning management portal. You will find all the lecture notes prepared. You will find the videos for all the classes uploaded. And any other material that the tutor considers of importance to you will also be uploaded for your use. And my request would be that you are diligent. If you want to sit this paper with us, make sure you start right from lecture 1. Maybe just a comment about the way we deliver our classes. We deliver our classes on campus physically, and we also will have online classes being streamed. Now, my preference is that you come to campus. Most of our classes are going to be on the weekend. This, as I said, can be a bit of an involving exam, and I personally would advise that you come to campus physically, right? Online learning is, from our experience, since we started it 5 years ago in the lockdown, online learning is not normally very effective. We find online students are often distracted. As you have just heard, when someone unmutes their mic, you hear they're in a very noisy environment. They are maybe on the road, they are traveling. So many students are often distracted. So this is just an appeal to you. We can't force you to do either option. Some of you may be up country, that we understand. But to the extent that you are in Kampala, please endeavor to attend this course face-to-face on campus at MAT Abacus. All right, so I think let me just pick one comment, or I think there are other comments in the chat. Let's pick them up and then we can begin to close the session. Where is MAT Abacus? MAT Abacus is located between 1st and 2nd Street industrial area. If you know Ginger Road, if you know UMI, if you know Hot Loaf Bakery, you are traveling along Ginger Road, you will turn off on your right and take the road that is that will take you to the New Vision offices. So once you are at the New Vision offices, you will see MAT Abacus just straight ahead of you, a short distance away, where 1st Street intersects with 2nd Street. So that's where MAT Abacus is. So is it best to do paper 7 or I can do them both? Now, as I said, you can do this exam, audit and assurance, on its own without any prior connecting, having passed any prior paper like paper 7. But my key point, which I emphasized earlier on, was that it's best that you give this exam the time that it needs, all right? Even if you've not done the equivalent accounting paper that deals with the necessary accounting standards first, the way the tutor will teach will be able to help you pass what is required on the audit side. So, but all I'm just saying is if you want to combine this exam with any other exam, make sure the next exam you are doing is easy for you to handle as well. Let's see if there's any other question. Yeah. When are classes starting? I don't know. Richard Asava or Richard Onanda, maybe you can take that from your side. Richard Asava? Let me just pick up one of the people in the office. They need to clarify that. Yeah, please log on to the call. There are some questions you need to deal with. Yes, either you or Asava. Okay, all right. Okay, so Mr. Onanda is joining the call. He will take those questions that have to do with when lectures will be starting and what time. Normally, our classes are on the weekends. Sometimes, mainly Saturdays, sometimes morning, sometimes afternoon. Morning classes, if they're there, start at 9:30 a.m. If they're afternoon classes, they start at 2 p.m. We also sometimes have classes on Sundays. So not always, but sometimes you will have to follow the detailed timetable. Mr. Onanda? Yes, over to you, Richard. You can unmute.
Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to this CPA webinar. My name is Richard Onanda, and I am the head of professional programs here at MAT Abacus. I want to thank Mr. Aguma for what you've shared. It was really insightful. And I hope people are excited to be part of this paper and be ready to sit exams that will be in May. But additionally on this, MAT Abacus has also come up with other provisions that are going to support you during your learning. Number one, we are going to be providing you with exams. So come to MAT knowing that you're going to sit a mock, but we don't stop there. This very mock is going to be given a debrief, and the debrief is going to be shared on the WhatsApp groups, on our YouTube channels, for you to be able to access it so that you see exactly what is really required for you to probably be ready for the exam, see what is really required by the examiner. We call it knowing the examiner's techniques that are required for you to pass the paper. So, Mr. Aguma, is there any question for me towards that? My volume, just 1 minute. Hello? Mr. Aguma, I'm unable to hear you from my side. I don't know whether the team can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
No, sorry, Richard, they just wanted clarification on the start date for CPA 9.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Just to let the team know that we have started with paper webinars as we study the election time, but general classes are starting on 21st of January. 21st of January. But I also encourage you to get yourself a timetable on our website, that is www.matabacus.ac.ug, and have it downloaded. We have also shared this on the WhatsApp groups. But just to let you know that paper 9, the second class is going to be on 24th of January. That is the first class to happen after this webinar.
So are we saying 24th of January is the first CPA 9 class?
Yes, please.
24th of Jan. Okay.
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay,
so I think that is it from our side if there are no more questions. So we encourage you to enroll with us. Many students have studied with us in the past. We've had prize winners on this paper. So we encourage you to enroll with MAT Abacus. We'll do our best as the tutoring team and the admin team to support you to see that you can succeed in this exam at your first attempt. So thank you very much, and all the best.